In these days before Christmas, it is a time to be incubating the Christ self within us, who must be born. And this time of year was always traditionally recognized, even long before Christianity, as the time of the birth of the Godself. The Christians used December 25th as the day of the birth of Christ because it was already the birth of the Son, the Sol Invictus. And the birth, the Nata, the Natalia, the ceremony of the birthing of one's God self and the death of the ego was always recognized as the most sacred of all days, and the entire year leads up to this moment and then proceeds from this moment. The whole logic of time and of humanity is based on this moment. It is the whole project of civilization. It's all summed up in this moment. The whole reason for being of humanity is to give birth to the God self within each of us, and then to live from that self rather than from the ego. And thus, all of the projects that govern our time and our space and our intentionality must come from the God self, not from the ego. If they're from the ego, then they're vain. They're useless. They're dead ends. But if they emerge from the cosmic self that is in harmony with the processes of nature itself and the processes of divine intelligence, then things will work out in the best possible way. But to do that, to give birth to the Christ self, we must surrender the ego self. We must empty out the mind of all residue of ego in order to be a pure vehicle for the supreme intelligence, the supreme love, to fill and to emanate and to be shared. Those are the gifts under the Christmas tree. It is the gift of the divine virtues that we can role model and transmit and appreciate in the other. And if we create a community that is based on those divine gifts, then it will be a community that grows in the most healthy way and prospers, based on trust and truth and love. And without that, then nothing can work for very long. It all collapses in the egoic demand, the magnetism of the ego, and its narcissism will break the harmony and the flow of synergy in any community. So it is essential, it is imperative that we give birth to the Christ self within us, to the Buddha, to the Krishna, the Radha, the Saraswati, to the Jagdish, the Lord of the world, to the one who is the bliss of sadhana, to all of those beings, the unborn, the Ajata, all of those beings who are aspects of the archetype of the supreme reality. And each of us carries an eternal piece of the puzzle of life that we can share in a community to bring the wholeness that cannot be achieved without what each one of us has to contribute to that puzzle. And so each of our essences and our attributes are essential, and it's not accidental that we have the particular qualities that we have. There is an intention by which these were given to us for the use of something larger than our own ego. And we must find where we fit in, where our powers can be used to serve the supreme power, or else those individual powers are wasted. They are vain. They must be surrendered to the use of the growth of the divine tree The Christmas tree is the tree of life. That is the tree of community. Do you remember on the last picture of the Rosarium in the Jungian book, it was a tree with 11 heads on it. Remember those? There were 10 and then there was one on the top. This also is the alchemical version of the Christmas tree. But it's the tree of life, and each of us are a part of that tree. Each of us is a flower on the tree of life. But we must become a single tree, not separate weeds. We must grow together, and then the tree becomes very large and very strong. But only when there is unity. Without unity, then we become demonic rather than angelic. And this is the key to all success and all victory over vexation and pain and suffering. Because it comes from an ego wanting to isolate itself from the community, to separate, to refuse to love. And in that very refusal, one cuts oneself off from the very source of life that only the community can offer. That is the path, that is the vehicle through which the energy of God flows, because the love must come from one being to another. We are here to share that and to serve one another. And if we are not serving one another, we're not fulfilling our own need to flow and to give. And we die, we wither when we refuse to give. We are all like the sacred cow who must be milked. And if we hold back, then we die, we explode. We cannot survive without that overflowing love. But we can only have that love when we are connected to the source. So this is the time to achieve that connection and to share it. So it's important that each of us thinks, explores, meditates within on what are the obstacles? What are the obstacles that I have as an individual to the giving birth of the Christ within me, to letting the old ego die and being reborn? And what are the obstacles that keep me from connecting to the tree of life of the community and sharing and offering myself to this purpose that is larger than the individual lifetime, larger than the organism? What are the obstacles and how can they be overcome? That's what we must solve. That's the key riddle in each of our lives. What fear, what attachment, what greed, what lust, what anger, all of those vices that we know that contaminate the personality and carry it down into egocentricity, that must be purified. We must find the source of those feelings and those urges and impulses and purify them and offer them to God. And until we are able to do that, then we are stuck going around in a pattern to try to justify the maintenance of some addiction to an egoic pattern. And truthfulness comes when we are no longer willing to support the denial and the censorship of our own knowledge of what is going on in our unconscious mind, and to make it all conscious, to lay it all out on the table, and to let it go, to free ourselves from the poison that we had been holding on to and feeding off of, poison of hatred and revenge, and poison of feeling of lack, guilt, unworthiness, all of those poisons that are not based on the truth of who we are.